Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Post-fight review, Dillian Whyte taken out inside a round by the rising heavyweight Moses Itouma. So it was all over lickety-split. So we'll talk about the action, how washed Dillian Whyte is, and then on to some comments from Itouma and the what next. So stick around. But first, obviously, Moses Itouma didn't waste any time here. It was all over with 59 seconds left in round one. So he did start out pretty cautious in that sort of first 30 or 40 seconds, had a look. But what was evident from the outset was the difference in speed, but also Dillian Whyte just looked so slow. Moses Itouma landing to both body and head, landing jabs and body shots as well, and he did step it up after about a minute. And from there, it was pretty much all downhill for Dillian Whyte. Too precise, too quick, too good for the faded husk that is now Dillian Whyte. And it was about the last 20 seconds of the fight. Dillian Whyte was on skates. He was rocked by a couple of headshots, including a right hook. Went from one corner to the other as he covered up and Itouma was teeing off, and another right hook sends him to the canvas. Whyte gets up, tries to beat the count, but then sort of collapses back into the corner. And the referee had seen enough, and to be honest, might have looked maybe ever so slightly premature, but Dillian Whyte was done. Stick a fork in him. He was obviously going to sustain a lot of punishment if he continued. I don't really have an issue with the stoppage, but you can raise a question. Whyte was not happy, and I'm sure he may even say after this that it was stopped premature, yada, 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 but of course he would. I think what we saw there was Dillian Whyte getting absolutely picked apart by the younger, sharper boxer, and Father Time has claimed another victim in the Body Snatcher, or as he was called during fight week, the Baby Snatcher. Listen to this.
Dillian, the Baby Snatcher!
Anyway, I digress. So Moses Itouma makes short work of Whyte, and I expected this. I know that there was a lot of people in fight week because Dillian Whyte turned up in shape, the best shape of his the last 10 years of his career, 2015, the last time he was down around 244 pounds. But the thing is, we saw in 2022 in the Fury fight, and subsequently with the Tete and also Hammer comeback tune-up fights, Dillian Whyte is washed to anything. He is a husk of a husk of a husk of a husk. There was nothing left, and this is why I so confidently predicted a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, that Dillian Whyte was going to basically be stopped early on. I said in my preview, and I think it was the caption, that Itouma was going to walk through him. And job done. And actually, there were a number of people in here, see this comment, very doubtful that Whyte would be taken out that early. But the thing is, if you've seen anything of Whyte in recent years, and that Fury fight told us everything that we needed to know at the top level. Done. Stick a fork in him. But Moses Itouma did his job, and I think when you consider what Whyte had left, and I think most of us probably were of the view that he was definitely a faded force and had a puncher's chance at best, but more than likely Moses Itouma was going to go in there and get the job done and get it done early. This still is a development fight for Itouma. Broadcasters, promoters, everyone trying to talk it up about how dangerous of a test it was. In reality, it wasn't. I think a lot of us saw through that rhetoric, but it was, in terms of his development, another stepping stone fight to something bigger and better. The talk of him fighting for a title next, I think, is nonsense. He still needs to be developed further. We really haven't seen his chin checked, and we haven't seen him go through any adversity. So I think we have to see Itouma in a realistic step-up sort of fight next. And that probably looks like Filip Hrgović, who was on the same card. And I think it doesn't take a genius to work out that there are some synergies with Hrgović being on this card, likely to be Itouma's next opponent, have them on the same card and try to build towards something together. But let's face it, he did his job and he did it well. He gets another knockout, and obviously that will keep fans happy, that will keep the hype machine rolling, but Itouma still needs to be tested. He still needs some rounds, some seasoning, because you get to the top level and you fight guys that actually are in their prime or a lot closer to it than Dillian Whyte, and are able to sort of mix it with you. And here's another thing that I think we should just keep our eyes on, because I think at a higher level, Itouma, and especially to body shots, could potentially be vulnerable, because this was something I thought was really interesting from the weigh-in. Dillian Whyte's arms significantly longer than Itouma. And, I think that it could be something that will be potentially, fighters will be looking to work him over to the body. He's just got less arms to defend his lower body with. I mean, that's just a physiological thing that he can't really do anything about, but, other than tuck up a little bit more. But I do think that he needs to be tested more after the fight. So he said, when he was asked about who he wanted to be next, he just sort of said, well, I'll fight anyone. He was very reluctant to sort of call out any names. He said that Parker and Caballero do deserve a shot at the title, but he said, chuck me in with that lot. There was some fans that were calling out Usyk's name, and he was sort of saying, well, this is who they might want me to fight, but he didn't really commit to anything. I think if you're on the Saudi cards and you're winning and that they're pushing you, they're going to match you appropriately, and then they're going to give you the right fights at the right times to progress your career. And they seemingly have a lot invested in Itouma as one of the next big things. Remembering a lot of these sort of veteran guys, Usyk, Joshua, White, Fury, etc., they'll all be out of the sport in the next sort of year or two. So I do think that there is a lot to be said about sort of succession planning and building the next name of and roster of stars. And obviously they've got a lot tied up in Moses Itouma. But he did thank Whyte for the opportunity. It kind of came off as maybe a slight backhanded compliment. He said, I thank Whyte for the opportunity so I could showcase my skills. Also, there had been a fan poll, and I just sort of tie this back to a number of people seemingly had been convinced Whyte was going to do something in this fight, and perhaps fight week and his shape had convinced them. A fan poll that had 68% for Itouma winning and 32% for Whyte. And that's a 2-to-1 type thing, but I was shocked that it was that many for Dillian Whyte. So, yeah, make of it what you will. But Whyte did try implement a little bit of psychological warfare late in the piece with this fight. He made Moses Itouma wait 6 minutes before he entered the ring. Obviously thought, I'll see if the young'un can actually keep warm, if this is going to maybe sort of stress him out, keep him waiting. Would he be able to make something happen as a result of that? But no, it was not meant to be. But I guess you would say maybe it's the last throes or the last cries of a dying siren. But it was good to see Itouma. He didn't rush. He was precise with his work, and the speed and skill difference was evident. But obviously with Whyte being as washed and faded as he is, that's just what's going to happen. The what next for Dillian Whyte, well, that's interesting. Maybe because he'll say, hey, this will stop prematurely. I wasn't really stopped. I'll continue my career. Fighters are savvy in that way to try convince themselves that, somehow they were wronged. But I think it was the right decision. He was only going to sustain more damage. But Moses Itouma, he moves on. He stays unbeaten. Impressive performance of getting Whyte inside a round. And also first main event. So they will look to continue to build around this 20-year-old. And it's still amazing to think that Itouma is just 20. As he also said in his post-fight career, he could be around for another 10 to 15 years. I think when guys start this young, when he started when he was 18, it's more likely that the best of him will be sort of 25 to 30. And that perhaps if he's fighting closer to 35, he might be well past his best just through the amount of camps and damage that he'll sustain inevitably over a long career. But he is one to watch, but I don't think we should just anoint him now as, the sort of heir apparent, because I think he needs to do a little bit more work. The talk of him having and deserving a shot against Usyk based off facing Dempsey McKean in a washed version of Dillian Whyte, nonsense. He needs seasoning. He needs to prove his worth, but also he needs to go through a little bit of adversity. What is under the hood if he gets chin checked? What if someone is outworking him and with volume and standing up to his punches? What then? How's he going to react? What if he's at the moment just a flat track bully? What if he gets pushed on his back foot? How's he going to respond? This is what we need to see, and this is why I need some seasoning fights. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.